Today, we're diving into Michelle Obama's incredible memoir, Becoming. It's this really fascinating look at how a person from a pretty ordinary background navigated a truly extraordinary journey, from the south side of Chicago all the way to the White House. And her story really gets to the heart of a question we all ask ourselves.
Yeah, this is it. This is the central question of the whole book. And what's so powerful about it is that it's not just about her story. It's about that universal struggle of figuring out who you are, especially when life throws you curveballs and puts you on a path you never, ever saw coming.
So to really understand that journey, we've got to go back, way back. Before she was Michelle Obama, First Lady of the United States, she was just Michelle Robinson, a kid whose entire world was shaped by Chicago's South Side.
Her childhood was, a real mix of two different worlds. Inside the little brick bungalow, life was stable and loving. She was learning piano, had this strong family unit. But the minute she stepped outside, she was hit with some pretty harsh realities. She saw the deep racial and economic divides in the city, felt that sting of racism when the family car kept getting vandalized, and at home, she watched her father fight a tough battle with multiple sclerosis.
But through all that, her family drilled one lesson into her, and this quote just nails it. Your circumstances do not get to define your future. For them, a good education wasn't just an option, it was the way forward, no matter what obstacles stood in your way.
And boy, did she listen. I mean, a high school counselor actually told her she wasn't Princeton material. So what did she do? She not only got in, she absolutely crushed it, graduating with high honors. Then it was on to Harvard Law, which she says was really about seeking validation, that feeling of certainty. And that path led her right where it was supposed to, a stable, high-paying job at a big-time Chicago law firm, Sidley & Austin.
So she checked all the boxes, right? She had the perfect career she'd worked so hard for. But it turns out that wasn't the end of the story. In fact, it was the start of this deep internal search for a path that had real meaning, real purpose.
And the spark for that change? It came from a summer associate she was assigned to mentor, a guy named Barack Obama. His whole outlook was just different. He wasn't chasing the big paycheck. He was all about community, about trying to make a real difference.
And this really shows the huge tug of war that was going on inside her. On one side, you've got the safe bet, the corporate law career, the life everyone expected her to want. But on the other side, there's this pull towards something with more passion, more purpose, a life of service that was way more uncertain, but just felt right.
And then tragedy hit. She lost a close friend to cancer, and then her own father passed away. It was this absolutely brutal reminder of just how short and precious life is. And she realized she couldn't waste another minute on a path that didn't feel like her own.
So that was it. She decided to make a change, a big one. She walked away from her corporate law job, she married Barack, and she started building a new career from the ground up, one that was all about public service, first at a nonprofit, then at the University of Chicago. She was finally, actively creating a life that felt true to her.
But that new path, the one she had so carefully built, well, it was about to lead her and her family onto the biggest, most public stage you can possibly imagine.
Okay, so this is the moment everything changed. It's 2004, and Barack gets picked to give the keynote speech at the Democratic National Convention. And in just 17 minutes, his message about hope and unity just electrified everyone. He basically became a political rock star overnight.
And the impact? It was immediate, and it was massive. He went on to win his Senate race with a staggering 70% of the vote. 70%. That's not just a win, that's a landslide. It was clear that something huge was happening.
But when all the talk started shifting towards a presidential run, Michelle put the brakes on, hard. She was terrified that this crazy public life would completely swallow her up, that she'd lose the very identity she had worked so hard to build for herself.
Now, as we all know, she eventually got on board. But once she was in the White House, she wasn't just going to stand by. No way. She defined her own role, on her own terms. She launched these huge initiatives, from that famous kitchen garden, which kicked off Let's Move, to her powerful work supporting military families and advocating for girls' education all over the world.
But let's be real, her role was different, and it was way, way harder. As the first ever African-American First Lady, she was under a microscope like no one before her, facing all sorts of sexism and racism. She writes about this feeling of knowing she wouldn't be given the presumed grace that other First Ladies had. She had to navigate this minefield of unfair criticism all the time.
So those 8 years in the White House, man, it was a total whirlwind of historic firsts, big achievements, and some really profound challenges. It was a chapter that would change her, her family, and the country forever.
On one hand, you had these monumental wins, like passing the Affordable Care Act. Huge. But on the other, they were carrying this incredible weight. She talks about how, after the horrible tragedy at Sandy Hook, they felt like they were carrying the grief of the entire nation on their shoulders. And that's a burden that never really goes away.
And then, as their time in the White House was coming to an end, the 2016 election happened. She's really honest about it in the book. She was just disheartened. She was genuinely worried that a lot of the progress they had made, especially on her own initiatives, could just be wiped away.
But, and this is a big but, her story doesn't end there, in that place of worry. Deep down, she's still an optimist. She holds on to this belief that once progress gets started, you can't really reverse all of it. That forward momentum, no matter how slow, has a power of its own.
And that, I think, brings us to the ultimate takeaway from her entire journey. And it's captured perfectly in this one quote. It's more than just a piece of advice, it's a call to action. It's a challenge to every single one of us. Get out there. Own your story. Define yourself. Because if you don't, someone else will. And as her incredible journey shows us, that process of becoming, well, it never really ends.